Good afternoon, everyone. This is the first time with the Dazz team that we're actually having fireside chat here with Steve Ward and Emily Heath, two of the most incredible people in the industry with the backgrounds of being a CISO to some of the most leading companies in the world, but then now being part of the investment world and space. And I'm kind of happy if you can introduce yourself. We'll start with Emily.
Of course. So Emily Heath, I now work for Gilly and the Cyberstarts crew, who most of you probably know. I hung up my CISO hat last year, so I stopped my operational role. I'm now a recovering CISO. My last job was at DocuSign. Prior to that, I was a CISO at United Airlines and some other stuff before it.
Yeah, so good to see you. I am a partner at Insight, solely investing on cybersecurity companies. Similar to Emily, kind of stopped being a CISO about a year and a half ago. Nothing like COVID to really cause you to be like, I'm done, I can't take anymore. So I was a CISO at Home Depot, TIA, and then ran a couple of various sort of security operations groups within JP Morgan, and then really started cyber back in the government days before we called it cyber.
So being now like with the VCs and also before being CISOs that are very engaged with the innovation world, what would be like the 1, 2 most innovating, exciting technologies and trends that you see in the industry?
Gosh, there's so many of them. Obviously, we're all in the cloud space, so most innovation is happening in the cloud space. I think one thing that I'm seeing, it's very relevant to Dazz, but it's also very relevant to some of the other startups, is the way that we work as operators has changed so much over the last few years that we've been so inefficient for so long. CISOs, in my last job at DocuSign, I had probably 40, 50 security tools, something like that. And it's a lot of data and it's a lot of great technology and a lot of stuff, but how do you, as a practitioner, how do you make sense of all of that? And part of it is because innovation has moved so fast that now pretty much anybody can spin up technology, right? It's great for business. Business moves much, much faster because people in the business teams can spin up EC2 environments. You've got developers that are spinning up environments, engineers, and it's amazing for progress and innovation, but security is not caught up yet. So the way in which we work has changed. So some of the more innovative solutions, like Dazz, are solving that problem because we have to look at practical ways to reduce risk. At the end of the day, we've got a job to do. And our job can't be looking at a whole bunch of different systems and reports without making sense and having context. And ultimately, every single finding that all of these systems have has a goal of somebody at the other end fixing it. Your job is to influence somebody else to fix it. The only way that you're going to do that effectively is by curating the data and telling a really, really good freaking story. You need to be great storytellers in security in order to get someone to do something for you. So the innovation layer of these like new cloud technologies like Dazz and others are, I think, really playing a strong role in making sense of all of the data that's coming out of the security tools we've got are amazing, but how do we actually fix things faster? So it's not just a remediation play, but it's actually more of a consolidation play. And by that, I don't mean consolidation of tools, because that's not going to happen. We're going to buy more, not less. But I mean a consolidation of the output of that. So I see that as a trend. We've got a couple of portfolio companies at Cyberstarts who are also tackling very similar problems in a different space to you guys. But for me, it comes back down to the way you work.
I think if you go 5 to 7 years out, I do think security will catch up a little bit on the AI space. I'm not a huge fan of referring to security people say like AI ML. Like, I hate that because they're just so diabolically different. I think we're okay on the ML side and the automation end of it. But I think we have to understand that security is a bit of a lagger with the rest of technology. So I'm not a fan of that. Like, I wish we adapted a little more quickly and got there faster. I think the next 5 years of where tech goes from an AI standpoint and what that creates, I'm kind of interested in technologies that are looking at the vulnerabilities that are created within that. I think it's going to change a lot of traditional VM, whether it's infrastructure or app. So that's like 5-7 years out. What does AI do in technology? And then does that force security to actually be a bit more AI focused? Founders must hate me because every time they come in and they say like, well, we're AI X, always like, explain that to me. And by the end, you're like, that's more ML. It's more just straight up automation. I'm really hoping that we get there a little faster on the AI side to make our jobs a little easier. So we'll see if I'm right.
So I'm kind of curious if you can share what is exciting for you about Dazz. What do you like about about the company, technology, aside for the name, right? You know the name is already
Little dazzle. Nothing ever wrong with a bit of dazzle. You want to go first, Steve?
Yeah, we'll alternate. So
We'll alternate. We'll switch. See how polite we are.
Right. Look, I tell sort of the same story, so sorry if some have heard it before, but we met when I was still a CISO. And the idea that you all had around focusing more on my peers than you did on me, that was right around when like shift left started to come out. And I don't really love when security coins terms because we're marketing maniacs and people have different definitions, but to me, the whole shift left side of the house was just us being more empathetic to our peers, right? 'Cause what Emily was saying, like, we don't really fix things in security. We just find it and say, here, you've got 15 days, you've got 30 days, and we just put all these constraints on our peers with a bunch of exhaust wrapped around it. So when they first sort of said, hey, we have this idea, I was still a CISO, and I was thinking about leaving, and it was like, God, like I wish I was here long enough to see what this creates for me. So I fell in love initially just on the idea of you're building something that's for security and for DevOps. And typically that didn't happen. Like GitHub tried it, right, when they made an acquisition and probably wasn't that great of one and said, okay, we're going to try to dabble in security. I love the idea of doing something that I can walk into one of my peers and say, I bought a security solution and I bought it for you. And we don't normally do that. Everything we buy is for us. So if I can turn around and say, I bought this for you and it's going to make your life easier because I'm going to take all this stuff that comes from CSPM times 2 or 3 because you've got on-prem and multi-cloud environments, and I'm going to take all this exhaust that gets created from it and I'm going to give you clean air to actually deal with. So I'm going to go from 40,000 to say 12 fixes. That's what they've always wanted from us. And we've never been able to give it to them with traditional AppSec, traditional vulnerability management. That was the first sort of piece, that vision of, okay. So when I got to Insight, I might have even before I started called you and like, you're gonna be my first deal. I'm doing this deal with you. You have no other option. I'm gonna write you a check and I want you to be the first one. And we talk about it all the time of like, is a little bit of a special place for me with you all because it was my first deal as an investor. So, when I don't pay attention to you, she reminds me of that.
Yeah, I think it's such an important point that Steve made about almost being there where the developers are or the engineers are. It's being there in their workflow. You can't just keep adding stuff to people's plates. Developers have got a job to do. They need to ship product. They got to ship code, they got to ship product. And trying to have old-fashioned security programs around tagging stuff on to the end of that, it's so inefficient. We don't live in a, build, test, release cycle like we used to with quarterly releases and monthly releases. We are in the moment. CI/CD pipeline is churning all day long. So the way in which you have to operate is so different. And the beauty of Dazz is not only do you deduplicate and make things like going from, as Steve said, like 4,000 issues to 5 issues. Why are we doing that? The reason we're doing it is because we want to fix issues. We don't want to get breached. We don't want to get popped. We forget sometimes that there are criminals at the other end that are trying to get in. And we become a little numb to it sometimes. If we were to do manually what you all have built, it's super inefficient. You lose track of what the actual risk is because you can't fix everything the same way. So it allows you to make really smart decisions quickly and solve very real root cause problems. The worst thing in the world is that as security practitioners, what we've done for years is we've thrown all these reports over the fence. All these people say, you got all these issues, we need you to go fix them. Even if we were to go and say, okay, you've got 200 issues, but we really want you to fix these 5. What I talked about earlier about telling that story means that as soon as you give an engineer a bunch of things that need to be fixed, what's the first thing the engineer, and we've got some in the room here, what's the first thing engineers are going to do? They're going to try and discredit your data. Right? So the first thing they're going to do is try and discredit it and say, come back to me when that's, show me. Why are those things really important? Well, what Dazz does is allow you that trail, so you can, okay, let's click into that. Let's click into that. And when you do that, you get to a position where security might be the person, the people paying for the product, for the tool, but the best magic happens when security steps out of the way and allows everybody, don't wait for me to tell you there's something wrong. Here's this amazing tool that sits right where you sit every day. Use this as the way for you to embed security in what you do. Don't wait for us to come and tell you. But there's always a journey. It usually takes at least 6 months to get from, hey, we've deployed a Dazz. Engineers are trying to discredit everything you say, but when you've got something like Dazz that you can follow that audit trail, you get instant trust in the data. And I can't emphasize that enough, because what it does is it builds trusted relationships with people and who historically have had so much friction between them. Developers and security have had so much friction. But when you've got trust between them because you're all working from the same numbers and for the same data, if they believe you, they'll do it. But it usually takes a period of time, and then after 6-9 months or so, you can step out the way. Now all of a sudden, Dazz is not a security tool anymore. Dazz is an engineering tool. That's when the magic happens.
So you mentioned, you all talked about the friction with engineering, but you also mentioned the movement to the cloud. And I'm kind of curious, do you think the cloud changes anything? Do you think it's more secure or less secure? What do you think about the challenges of the modern development in a cloud environment? Like, as CISOs, what's your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I think it changes everything in that you have more instant access than you ever did when you were on-prem. I mean, just the speed at which you can operate is so much faster. But that also, as we've talked about this afternoon, it changes the way that you work. So security have to adapt to that. Don't resist it, adapt to it, because that's the way that the world works. And to Steve's point earlier, we're still kind of catching up a little bit. I wish we weren't. I wish we were leading the way. But the reality is we're not. And so the cloud enables you to go embed yourself faster in the processes if you're open to doing that. But this emergent over recent years of how cloud has pushed business and innovation and technology so much faster. For business, like I said earlier, that is incredible. Companies can move much faster than they used to be able to. We've just got a little work to catch up and make sure that we're still not tacking things on the end. We've got to think very creatively about the products, the security products of the future, to live where other people live. But it's changed exponentially, for the better, I think.
We've come a long way over the last 10 years. A lot of these solutions just didn't exist. Now, then you have to also turn around and go, okay, we've come a long ways in the last 10 years, but we also are very good at repeating our mistakes over and over and over again. So a lot of the bad habits that we had on-prem, we had a chance at a certain point to go, okay, as we build out these cloud environments, we're going to change our business process, we're going to change our operational procedures, and we're going to do this in a better way. And we haven't always done that. So the speed at which it moves, we like to say there's a difference between chaos and controlled chaos. And that's a hard thing for security to really manage. Like, let's just control a bit of the chaos. It's going to be chaotic. Things are going to spin up and down. That's fine. That's where the business wants to go. But we have a bit of a habit of coming in and being a barrier to progress versus IT, which is typically an enabler of the business. Is it more secure, less secure? Look, that depends on the company and where you want to take it. Is it easier to do the job now? I would argue yes, it is easier now. But you have to operate effectively within it, and we have to be flexible, and we have to move with it. And a lot of what we did as CISOs, we wanted to take our on-prem operational ideologies and just move them to cloud. And that, to the point around change windows and things like that stuff doesn't exist anymore. The business wants to move fast. They want to build something for a customer, and they want it to make money for them. It's a very simple model. Security builds technologies to enable that. To be a security professional, to come in and delay that or stop it or pull things back is a horrible way of doing business. And I don't think all security professionals have realized yet that they are not the most important person in the room. Right?
So we talked about the transformation to the cloud, and we talked about, again, the friction with engineering and remediation. So what would be your advice to CISOs about what is the right time to deploy a solution like Dazz?
My first advice would be don't be a CISO, but we'll cut that out later. I'll say it like a security professional in a way, not necessarily just a CISO, because I think this also applies to founders. I think security needs more non-security professionals leading them. The best way to become empathetic to someone is to go live their life for a little bit. And some of the best things, you see this at Raytheon right now. Anthony knows him. There's a guy there that's the CTO. Well, he used to be a CISO. I guarantee you he's a much better CTO because he sat in our seat. What I would like to see is non-CISO background people, technologists, infrastructure, app dev, whatever it is, actually move a bit more into security. I think we need a little bit more diversity in the mind across the area. Most of us came up through security in a lot of ways. It was all I knew. I learned a certain way. I became a CISO, and I used all of those tools to do my job. But if I sat in app dev for 4 years or infrastructure for 3 years, I probably would have been a better CISO. Like, I would have known what it felt like. So I think we need CISOs to get different backgrounds. I think CISOs need to become better business partners. You hear a lot around CISOs now where they want to be on boards and they want to do like other things. And they don't like the answer, but a lot of times now I'll look at them and go, well, you haven't earned the right for that seat. How do you become a good leader? How do you become a good business leader? How do you become more strategic? Those are all those things that we need to build into that role, because it is sort of a new role, right? So they're figuring that out. But I think that also translates to founders. Some of the best founders that I see actually are not security professionals. The founders that worry me the most are like the ones that came out of 82, 81, were on offense, then they were on defense a little bit, right? And that's all they know. I want you to have more diversity in your background and learn other skill sets and how to deal with people in different ways and how to build things, not just break them. So I think it just applies across the board. I'll make a prediction. Everyone wants like this $100 billion cybersecurity company, right? And some people are like, how come there's no Google-like cyber company? I think there can be and there will be when someone develops it with just as much as a DevOps infrastructure mindset as they do a security. And I think that's where you have a huge...
That's what I was thinking.
Holy shit, does that just happen randomly, or?
That just means they close another deal.
I thought someone had a button. It was like shut up. Like,
they closed the deal, that's what it means.
Yeah, I don't even know what the hell I was saying because of that. Yeah. I just think you can build like amazing companies and very big companies like yours because you've sort of split your brain between the two sides. those that have just security in mind, that are more feature-based, I think will struggle over the next 5 years. You all and a few others that are like, hey, I'm kind of building this for the entire ecosystem, and I want both sides to be able to gain value out of it, I think puts you in a much different category that makes you a much bigger company.
So Merav, I'm going to ask you to repeat the question again, because first of all, I got stuck on, don't be a CISO. And then I got the clam in my ears. I want to make sure I answer your question, and I've completely forgotten the question.
I think we started with, and it's actually a couple of things about the advice to CISOs, but I think first advice is like, when should they think about, consider deploying a product like Dazz? And second is like anything about, I don't know, like 2023 economy, like any advice you have for them.
So, I mean, I think working with startups in general, I see it as such an incredible opportunity to have an extension of your own team. I've always operated in a way that I've always put a little bit of my budget aside for an innovation budget. And I've done it not necessarily for the budget, but I've done it to have the right to go work with younger companies, with startups, without being questioned by procurement, right? Because the roadblocks to everything is like getting questioned by everybody as to, oh, you're a United Airlines, why are you working with this like young 1 year, 2 year company? Well, because they're super innovative and they're actually solving a real problem that I have. That if I was going to put my own engineers on, it might cost me $1 million to do that. So why would I not do small PO with a new company and have you do the work for me and with me? Because you're funded to solve my problem. That's why you exist. You exist in order to solve my problem. That's a no-brainer for me. Why would I not take advantage of that? Now, I'm not going to go partner with every single startup because not every one of them is solving a problem that I have. But for the ones that do solve a problem that I have, I just feel like there is such an untapped opportunity amongst CISOs to see early stage startups as an extension of their own team. Now, I'll say this head on because this is what a lot of CISOs worry about. They worry about conflict of interest. They worry about if I'm advising this startup or I'm bringing in this startup, does that mean I have to buy them? If I do, is that a conflict? It's something very real that CISOs have to worry about. I personally have done everything through our general counsel, no matter what company I've been in. I've explained what it is I'm doing. Hey, I'm advising for this like cyber VC firm. You okay with that? I'm not going to not bring in companies just because I advise for them, because that would be shooting myself in the foot. Like, why would I do that? But at the same time, I have an ethical responsibility as a CISO that I have to take very seriously. So, it is a barrier of entry sometimes with CISOs, especially in that advisory space. And I bring up the advisory space because that's where most of them will get the introduction to companies like Dazz, is because they, in some way, affiliated with a VC firm or a private equity firm who is introducing new companies to them. But to me, the narrative for the CISOs is to really just flip the script on how you've been thinking about young companies. Of course, they're not going to be mature. They're not going to have the SOC 1, SOC 2. Don't expect it. But think of it in a way to innovate, because what's the alternative? The alternative is not to innovate. That's not the answer. You can't not innovate. You've got criminals coming at you all day, every day. You cannot not innovate. So for CISOs, I would encourage them to find ways to continue to be very comfortable ethically, because that's first and foremost. You have to have integrity. But secondly, look for more creative ways to innovate with startups and really, truly partner with them, because they are funded to solve your problem for you. You will get there much faster. I've had a couple of examples. We have got a portfolio company right now who are solving a problem that I wished that they were solving 2 years ago, because I literally put 3 engineers full-time to build this solution. It cost me $1 million, something like that. And what we built was like a fraction of what they've been able to build, because they've got a whole team of people who do nothing but that. It's just, to me, it just makes so much common sense. And I think the really successful CISOs who are the ones that are able to navigate that and have startups really work for them in that partnership way.
And from our perspective, I guess, this is a question that some of the product people here have. Like, should we go after or engage with CISOs that already well into the cloud, already bought like a CSPM, CWP, I don't know, maybe a whiz, and or should we just go earlier? What would be your advice?
You know, obviously if you're already in the cloud, it makes complete sense. But when you're already in the cloud, you've already got all this mess. So it's almost like you implement Dazz, that's your line in the sand. Now you got to go clean up all the crap that's already there, and then set some new practices moving forward. So there's definite time to value is very quick when you do that, because you're going to see immediate results, because you've already got a whole bunch of stuff, cleanup to do. So of course, it's a natural place for you to be. However, I think the more important step is if a company is early in their cloud adoption and cloud transformation, build in Dazz now, because you're going to set best practices, ways of working, start building trust with a whole bunch of new people, because they're not going to be the same people who have been managing your data centers. These are different people and they're different creatures. So set that up front and get the expectations working together. That to me just says success from the get-go.
Yeah, just, again, don't repeat the same mistakes. That's really the biggest things to the buyers is, like, we love visibility. I get it, and I got it 20 years ago, but I don't want you to just see, I want you to see in color. And we don't really do that across the board. We're still in this mode, and taking bad habits from infrastructure, from on-prem, is, well, I need visibility first. And having visibility right now in cloud, just having the visibility, we call it like, it's like washing your face with a dirty cloth, right? Putting something like Dazz in and having that technology upstream, it cleans that cloth, so you're just wiping a couple spots and you're doing it with a clean cloth. I don't understand why, as security professionals, and I did it too, so I'm calling myself out of, well, step one or phase one of cloud is visibility. Okay, great. So you're going to start surgery before the numbness helps you with that, right? I don't understand why we do it, but we're doing it now. I wish it would sort of pause a little bit, or some folks would realize. I'd rather have the solution in place and be a bit cleaner coming in, so I don't have to wash my face with that dirty cloth. And as it's cleaner coming in, I can just measure drift. Again, if you think of your peers and you're empathetic in that way as a security professional, the difference between giving them 40,000 things versus 40 is astronomical. So it's not even for me like, oh, like you should really consider buying Dazz. It's before that of like, you should consider the cleanliness of an environment and that pipe coming in before you consider visibility. And we have portfolio companies that are in the CSPM space. We all know who they are. But I would make the argument that I would want to buy this first. Right now, people are buying CSPM and looking at you going, well, just let me get a handle on all of this before I go to you. You're not going to, because you should have done this first. Whether or not people will follow, because it's sort of an aggressive change in their behavior, I don't know. I just know I've been through this mistake 8 million times with DLP, with SIM, with vulnerability management, all on-prem, where it was like, I want to see first. I get it, but how does that feel? Does it feel good? No, it feels pretty overwhelming. So how do you think that feels to our peers? I hope it happens where we can convince enough security professionals to sort of just take that different approach.
My last question to you would be like a question we started to ask our customers that are buying and using the product. If Dazz was a car, which car would it be?
I got my answer. Well, you go, Steve. This is you first. Tag it.
It's such a weird question. So my answer is going to be
Don't take my car.
weird. I don't think I will, because people at the end are going to walk away and be like, that was a weird car. I would say like the nicest, fastest like pickup truck. I told you, I warned you what you were going to think. Like a Ford Raptor or something. You don't really have those here. Your cars are very small. It's an American problem, trust me. A Ford Raptor is like a really nice pickup truck. It's fast, but the reason why I say more of like a truck, a pickup truck, is because I look at you more as you're getting work done. Like, let the Ferraris be Ferraris, right? They look pretty, you can drive them a little bit, but they kind of sit in a garage, right? And you look at it. You're building something that is for the people that are doing the work. In the US, we call it like blue collar. Like, it's real work what you're doing. This is not like a showpiece. It's not a, hey, look at me, like, you know, this is something nice that you can look at. So mine is more of a pickup truck. It's a nice one. And let's just say it goes fast too, I don't know. But I really want you to like think of that in a way of like, you're building something for people that are rolling up their sleeves every day and they're working hard, and you're making it easier for them. So, sorry, but that's the answer.
Do you know, we're actually not too far apart here, I have to say. But mine's a Range Rover. For a similar-ish reason, but there's a little more pizzazz and dazzle. It's a little more dazzle.
That's a better answer.
It's a little more dazzle. But you think about, first of all, I'm English by birth, so I mean, of course, it's a Range Rover. I also drive a Range Rover. I love them. I know I should be on an electric vehicle, but I'm not. And so don't judge me. Don't judge me. But they are strong. They're dependable. They can hold a lot of weight, but they can also navigate any terrain. You can drive through rivers, you can go up mountains, you can drive on ice, you can drive through any terrain with a Range Rover and still look pretty sexy doing it.
It's such a better answer. This is like a sexy driver. Mine is like a construction worker.
With a name like Dazz, I mean,
know,
come on,
so
we
true.
gotta have some dazzle.
Can we call? I want to go back and do that again.
Love it.
It was really a pleasure to host you here with us. And if there's any one question from the team here?
Any question, anything goes. You can ask us absolutely anything. I'm speaking for you now. That's because of the truck.
Let's do it. What are you worried about?
I
Go
got
ahead.
one question, yeah. Taking you back to your days as CISOs, I'm sure you had plenty of vendors, you know, knocking down on your doors, trying to tell you this is the best product you've ever seen, this is your biggest problem. And I'm wondering if you have like one thing that made vendors, you know, stand out and say that this one's worth the try, worth the test.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you could just repeat, maybe I'll
Yes.
repeat the
Yeah.
question. So Eyal here asking, you know, as back to your time as CISO, you got, upcoming tons of intros from different cybersecurity startups, and what made one stand out rather than others really kept, intrigued you to go start working with?
Let me tell you what it all starts and ends with: people. I want to work with people that I like. You're going to find as CISOs that you've got 3 or 4 different things that'll all do the same thing for you. 10% difference here, a little bit of price difference here, a few bits, features and functions. But at the end of the day, if I don't like you, I'm not going to do business with you. And the reason for that is because when I'm in the trenches and it hits the fan and something's going wrong, I want to look you in the eyes. I want to have your cell phone number. I want to call you up at any time, morning, noon, or night, and say, I'm really in the weeds here. I need your help. Because I don't have all the answers. You're experts at what you do, and I need experts to help me do that. So for me, you can be the smartest person in the room, you can have the best product on the face of the planet, but if I don't like you, I'm not going to do business with you. And I have done that. I have walked away from products because I don't like the people. Because if in the sales cycle, if you're behaving that way in the sales cycle, how are you going to be when I'm really in the weeds? So it begins and ends with people for me.
I totally agree. You're never more loved than when someone's trying to sell you something, and you have to always keep that in mind. I think it's a really touchy situation when you're trying to be sold to. Like, I think it depends on who you're selling to. Like, I've only worked at like Fortune 80, 35, and like 14. So my answers sometimes are very like myopic, but you have to trust that like we kind of know what we're doing. So I don't actually think you can sell me something. Like, I think you win because I want to buy something. And I think those who really, really, really try to sell me something typically have to do that because they never started out the conversation with asking me. Like, you know, I've been married a while and I don't know whether I'm a good husband or not. You'd have to ask her. But I know the relationship is successful because you take the time to ask them how they feel. And I think some people are going to kill me on your sales team. Sales folks want to talk first. That's embedded into them. And I would much rather see you come in and be like, hey, like, what concerns you right now? Like, what do the next 18 months look like for you? And let me answer those questions a little bit and give you a little bit of insight of like what my day-to-day issues are so that you can then say, oh, cool, like I think I can help you with those too. And if you can't help me with anything, you could say, like, I don't think I can help you right now. Like, I'll check back in 12 months. Man, the amount of people that didn't do that like you were 30 minutes in and like you haven't taken a breath and I haven't spoken at all. And you're telling me what my problems are. Like, how many times were you like, I know what they are, dude. I deal with it every day. Don't tell me what they are. I think that idea of just ask questions first. If you did a first 30 minutes where all you did is ask me questions about what I'm dealing with and what's important to me, I'll give you another 30 for you to actually tell me how you can solve them. I just can't emphasize it enough. Just ask questions, and be a good listener. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you listen twice as much as you talk, unless you're on a panel. So. What else? If you don't want to ask one, I'll tell you, I know you're all nervous about the next year. Like, I know you're all watching the economy and you know, sort of the geopolitical side of things. Like, just be patient. Like, we went from giving you advice and saying, like, we want you to grow. And we funded you that way to grow quickly and spend money and get revenue. And that's changed now. Like, it's put a lot of us in a different perspective of we want you to build an effective business from the start. Pretend you're IPOing next year, not 5 years from now. Build an efficient business. Maybe you don't double, triple. It's triple, double, right, on revenue, like over 3 years. Maybe you just grow at 40, 50%, but you're growing with like 80% gross margins and your payback, you know, from a customer, your CAC stamp value is like 12 months, not 36. Like, all the conversations we're having with your founders and other founders is like, just build a good business and stop trying to become something too quickly. Do it efficiently and effectively and be patient with each other and be patient with the market. Be patient with CISOs. We're actually telling folks, like, no more quarter by quarter this year. It's first year, second half of the year. First 6 months, second half. Because the first 6 months might be a little rough, right? Control what you can control. Don't stress about what you can't. And just be patient with what you're doing and trust that what you're doing is what people are going to want. And when they're ready to buy and budgets sort of loosen up, which we've all been through this a million times already, it's tight. You freeze, you frost, or you fire. Like, that will sort of filter through in the first 6 months. And then you get towards the end of the year and you have a bunch of money and you're like, oh wow, I have some money, let's go. Get ready for September. Because it'll most likely, or hopefully, you'll see a pretty good buying spree. So build those relationships now. Be patient with the whole cycle. Every time this happens, software comes out stronger on the other end. It will again. Just be patient and stick to your North Star on what you want to build. They will get it eventually. And you'll turn around and look at each other and go, holy shit, like, this is really taking off. You're in the right spot. You're building the right tech. Just let it happen. It'll happen organically, and be patient with the economy and the market and, you know, some of the constraints that we're putting out there to you know, over the next 12 months. So you're on the right track. Just be patient with it.
If I could add to that too, I couldn't agree more. It's like Steve said, you got to control what you can control, but there's great opportunity in times like this. And it's no different for you building a company as it is for when we were CISOs and now as investors. There's an opportunity in not just controlling your piece, but making sure that you kind of finish what you started, right? We're all in the middle of a lot of stuff. Finish what you've started and go deep. These are times to go deep, where you're not spread as thin necessarily, but to get some depth allows you to build some operational rigor and discipline that you wouldn't normally have had the opportunity to spend some time on. But these are the foundations that, especially in young companies, sometimes you have to skip thinking about operational discipline because you're moving like a juggernaut so fast. And you want that, everybody wants that. But we can't control that the market isn't dictating that right now. But what we can control is this is an opportunity for us to really look at the foundations of this company, because when we are ready and we are ready to get on that juggernaut train again, you will be much stronger as a result of taking that time to just pay a little attention to the foundations and the operational discipline that you have. Because believe me, it is really hard to go back and rewind that later. It's really, really difficult. I know the operational stuff is the non-sexy stuff, and it's just day-to-day operations. That's not the most impressive part of everybody's day-to-day lives, but it's the bread and butter of a company. If you don't have the operations in place, it's really difficult to build a strong business on top of it. So look for the opportunity in times like this, because it's a gift to have that time. And I'm not just sugarcoating everything, say, bad time, economic times are gifts. There's gifts in every time. There's gifts in great economic times and there's gifts in bad economic times. We've been in much worse times than we're in now. And really strong companies have come out of times that there are right now. So I agree with Steve. Be patient with it. It ebbs and flows. It's the ups and downs. This is nothing new. We've been through this many times before. Let's learn from what we went through before, but use this as an opportunity to control your piece and build some operational rigor, because those foundations they'll allow you to go much faster in the future.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you for having us.
Mika, as always, whenever you clap your hands, she's coming.